All right, it's time for another board. This time it is Ace 7-4. Um, and I think I skipped over this one when I was doing my other boards because I was pretty sure I knew how this board would play out. Um, Naturally, I get punished for my hubris and I see a completely surprising result on the flop for both all of the rainbow two-tone and monotone boards. Um, but some caveats to that as well. So, um, first thing is the ranges are as they have been the whole time: 15% from under the gun versus a very condensed button flatting range. Some stronger hands here are being flatted because that's how population tends to play. I think I would, obviously pure three bet ace king, queens and jacks and tens, and probably nines at some frequency, but population is flat heavier, so I've included them at higher frequencies. I've given the open size as 3x, button flats, both blinds fold, and there's no rake, so we have 7.5 blinds at 100 big blind effective stacks. Both players have a 1/3, 3/4, and an overbet sizing with a raise of 75% pot and all in on every street. So, hopefully, my heater isn't too loud, and we can start looking at this. So, the first board is A7-4 Rainbow, and I would have thought that the sizing here would be just 1/3 range, right? This seems like such a strong board for out of positions, 15% opening range, that I would have thought this is just like a range bet because it's just so strong and in position is really going to struggle to defend. But one of the things that I'm noticing is that the solver position is heavily undervalued by weaker players, right? Like I think everybody knows being in position is better, right? But the fact that we're checking on ace 7-4 rainbow as out of position, like we have higher EV when we do this, that's crazy to me, right? But the caveat to that is, well, I'll say it like this, that when I saw this, I was like, wow, this is a major deviation from how I'm playing, how literally every reg I'm playing against is playing. This is a great time to node lock this spot and make some money by playing against what is an imbalanced or an inferior but balanced strategy, right? But when you look at the EV difference between checking range and betting, it's literally the exact same, right? Like it doesn't matter. So I think if you look at ace queen of spades here, or like literally at all like 0.03 chips in a 75 chip pot, is meaningless, right? This is 1/30th of a percent of the pot, and so while checking is quote unquote better or like more solver approved, it just doesn't matter enough. Thank you, Lenovo Vantage. It just doesn't matter enough for it to be, in my opinion, better than the 1/3. But that said, I think it's still interesting to look at this strategy to see how a solver would play it, right? Especially from in positions viewpoint, right? Because how often do we get checked to on this board? In my opinion, not very. And I did node lock this spot because I didn't look at the EVs before I did that. I thought like, wow, this is a major deviation. Let's make some money off a node lock. But I guess this is a pretty long-winded way of saying that like 1/3 and check both seem fine. The solver says check. Both seem fine. Both seem just perfectly okay. So with that said, I'm going to run it out as a check just to see what happens normally. And as you can see, this is where it gets just like absolutely like bizarre compared to how every single pot I would play goes, right? It is majority check, 72% check, with 25% overbets, right? We are checking back hands like ace queen, sometimes overbetting them, but mostly checking, right? We're overbetting hands like 9-8 with backdoor flush draw, pocket sevens, a 7 with a backdoor straight draw, backdoor flush draw. These hands that can turn gut shots, sets, and 2-pair. And I don't know why ace 9 is like becoming overbet territory. but ace 8 and ace 10 aren't. That's just something I don't know. Looking at out of positions range, like, I don't really see, like, you know, a difference between like the 9x and 8x that like would lead us to do this, right? Like there's, you know, like ace 10 and ace 9 are both here. I guess ace 10 offsuit, maybe we don't have ace 9 offsuit, so like, but like it doesn't, but why the 8? You know, why not the 8? And then I don't get that. But this is just like a bizarre, to me, a bizarre way to play this hand that I would not have, this is just not a line I would take. But it makes sense in the fact that, like, if you look at out of positions range, right, and the equity that they have a lot of ace-x that's calling any size bet, right? They are size inelastic. And they have hands like kings, queens, jacks, 10s, 9s, 8s, 6s, and 5s that just, like, when you overbet here, like, man, does that suck. You know, imagine, like, you raise kings, you get ace 7 for a rainbow, you're like, what an awful board. And then you check, and then you just get, like, 150% potted. It's brutal to deal with, right? And you struggle to think of bluffs and yada yada, and so this is, you know, kind of where things go. Yeah, and again, like, ace 9 suited has lower equity than ace 8 and ace 10. Okay, I don't get it, but that's what the solver says. That said, like, I think that this is an interesting point, not so much for like, oh wow, we're overbetting 9-8 suited as a bluff, but that we're checking back hands like ace queen, ace jack, ace 10. This board is very non-dynamic, right? Like, how many turn cards really change how things stand range versus range, right? A lot of times, one of you guys is drawing to 2 outs. You know, if I have kings and you have ace 5 suited, I'm drawing to 2 outs. And so, like, it's almost impossible to get 3 streets from me. And I very rarely improve. So you don't have much to protect against. There's no point in betting. So you become pretty polar to, like, you can either get 3 streets out of my aces, right? Or you can get, like, 1, maybe 2 streets out of my, like, kings, queens, and jacks. And so we lean towards this bigger betting strategy, which is interesting. And I'm interested to go through the no lock for the 1/3. I haven't gone through it yet, and see how this changes in position strategy as well. But this is quite an interesting, you know, line of playing. Right? Like I am absolutely not checking back ace queen here while also overbetting 8-9 suited with a backdoor flush draw. Right? Like, this is beyond what I'm doing, which is cool to know. But I don't know how much more EV you gain by taking this strategy. So I'm just going to, like, run this out as, like, seeing what check happens and what good turns are for, you know, both players. So flop goes check. Out of position really just has, like, as you can imagine, they have an equity advantage on this board. And so there's not really many bad turns, and I imagine that, like, yeah, we just start 1/3ing, but we check a lot. We're trying to get these king high hands to showdown. These jack high hands kind of, like, are trying to, I guess, bluff off, like, 6s and 5s, and, you know, these 1/3 bets are designed to do that and keep you honest with those hands. And yeah, but I mean, I think I've seen enough of this board to kind of understand what's happening. But this is just such a different way of playing the board for, I'm not sure how much of a gain in EV, right? I just don't know. But we'll see when we know lock the 1/3 to see how much more we gain. And my guess is not much. So with that, let's go on to the two-tone board. And with the two-tone boards, I've kind of just standardized it as top pair will be not of the flush draw. So there will be ace-x, so like ace 7-4, the 7 and the 4 will be of the flush draw. And so I've run out all of the sims so far for all of the boards, and I just have to record the videos on them of me looking at them. But that's kind of how I standardized the two-tone boards, is that top pair would not be of the flush draw. So for that sake, that's how these boards are going to run out. And whoops. As we can see again, we are majority checking, right? Not just majority, but like 93% check, 5% bet 1/3. Out of position still has an equity advantage. EV disadvantage on ace 7-4, which is to me crazy, right? As like the guy raising under the gun ace 7-4, I'm going to end up losing chips over time if against the GTO bot. Weird to me, crazy to me, but that's probably why this is leaning check a lot, right? And you'll see on these two-tone boards, these hands like king queen, king jack, they have much less equity, much less EV than they did on the rainbow boards, right? Like king high is going to be good at showdown less often, and we get to showdown much less often. So let's run this out, check, and let's see a strategy. Again, a lot of overbets, but some like 3/4 bets. Hands like ace queen, ace jack, ace 9, they are checking behind, which is an interesting and new way for me to think about the hand, right? See, if I got checked to on a board like this, I would kind of try and think, okay, my opponent probably has, if they're a good reg, they probably are checking with hands like 9s through kings, and then balancing that with some like really weak wheel aces, like ace 3 suited, ace 5 suited, maybe like ace 10 of hearts. You know, these hands that don't really mind betting or check, like they're going to continue for at least 2 streets, right? They're going to see a river pretty much no matter what bet size, yada yada. And so thinking on how to react to that, my natural instinct would be, well, if I have a good ace, I want to stack the worst aces, and I want to protect against flush draws. But no, we actually just end up checking those back because we just don't have enough, because our bluffs are so hard to find. We don't really get 3 streets from worse that often. And so that means if you are like against a station that's going to call down with worse for 3 streets, you should probably be betting here. But this is an interesting way of playing this hand, right? Like this again is a major difference in dynamic. And so I'm just going to check this, and then again see what turns are good on 2-tone boards. Yeah, and interestingly enough, it seems like hearts are, again, better for out of position than in position. Not by much, obviously. But if you like look at the 8 of hearts, right? Like our equity is 1% higher. And so what I'm learning through looking at all of these boards is that these ranges are so narrow that both players have approximately the same amount of flushes. And so where like I'm used to, like, you know, against the big blind where they have every suited combo in the deck, they're going to have more flushes and yada yada. But like here, both players have about the same amount of flushes, if not like under the gun having slightly more, or maybe like slightly more strong flushes. And so, yeah, this is a difference or a mindset shift that I have to be aware of, that like when ranges are narrow, monotone boards aren't that bad. They're actually better for the pre-flop aggressor. And so that's quite interesting. And so let's just go to the monotone board and run this one out. And let's take a look. So again, this pure check should be, I mean, obvious to you by now. And here's, again, where things get weird for me. I think, I don't remember the equity that out of position had on A7-4 2-tone, but I think it's lower. But I, again, think their EV is higher, where they have more than half the pot now on a monotone board. And so, again, this is where I'm like thinking about how this type of thing happens, and it's that because ranges are so narrow, out of position also has a lot of flushes, right? We can see these hands like king queen, king jack, king 9. They will often flop, if they're offsuit, they can flop a flush draw, like a strong flush draw too, like king high or queen high. And these pseudo combos can oftentimes flop a flush, the nuts, that is just going to have the other guy drawing dead. And you can get value from strong aces, right? So this is interesting, and this is a shift again in my mindset. So we start with a majority check, and in position is majority checking back. This this is probably a node lock that I think would be more interesting to look at, and that I probably should have run if I had taken the time to really go over these sims before I started node locking, because I don't think this board goes check all that often, right? Like, I don't think this guy's checking back to nut flush, and I also don't think this guy's checking back ace queen with no backdoor or with no heart, right? Like, I think when they get checked to on these boards, they're going to bet for quote unquote protection or value with these like flushes and that kind of stuff. And so I think this is a major deviation from strategy. And so let's take a look at like check versus bet 2/3 or bet 1/3. Okay, I mean, so there is like 1% of pot difference in like betting these hands that are drawing pretty dead, where I don't think they're betting those hands, right? But okay, so like half a percent of the pot, ace queen prefers check to betting 1/3, or between prefers check versus betting 2/3 when it doesn't have a flush draw backup. And so let's try 1/3 and check. Not that much difference. Okay, that's fair. So maybe this isn't that valuable of a node lock. They're both pretty equivalent strategies, which again highlights the kind of downside of node locking is that like we have a 100% check board, and I don't think anybody is 100% checking this, but the EV difference is minimal, so we don't really gain anything. But yeah, this is quite an interesting board, so let's run it out check and see what good cards are for both players. And so interestingly enough, the fourth heart is now bad for out of position, which is interesting to me because I wouldn't think in position has many more offsuit hands that now make flushes, right? So, right, it's really just king queen offsuit. So that I don't understand. But there is some merit to the idea of saying like, okay, so this is interesting, right? Like equity takes a hit on, well, okay, so it's, okay, this was my mistake. I was looking at the king of hearts, right, where you can see this massive discrepancy, like 59.14, 59.14, and then the king of hearts is 4 chips less. You know, and to me, I was thinking like, wow, that's a lot. But like, if you look at these lower hearts, they're better for out of position, and it's because of the hands like king queen off, right? You are now left with only the 4. If the king of hearts turns or the queen of hearts turns, you're now only left with 4 flush combos of king queen. Because king queen offsuit now that you've taken out one of the hearts, you have the 4 queen of hearts combos with the other kings, or you actually have 3 combos. I'm gonna pretend I'm good at math and just say we have less combos, because I've totally butchered that. But yeah, so that's interesting. That in position EV or out of position EV is actually better on this 4th heart. Again, that makes sense to me. We have all the kings, the queens, the jacks with 1 heart that is going check, and now we turn a strong flush. And so that's quite interesting. So let's say it's a 2 of hearts. Our strategy now becomes 1/3, and we're probably going to 1/3 it with just like mixing with like every hand. Just trying to get like 8s with no heart to fold, 5s with no hearts to fold. I don't think 7s without a heart, 7s are going to fold to a 1/3. Even ace queen gets in there for value. Like that's so weird to me. I probably wouldn't be able to do that. But yeah, that's interesting. And so let's just finish this off with the node lock. I actually have to go into all of this. He's 7-4 node locked. And just to show how like what I'm hoping this shows, I haven't looked at it, is that this is not a valuable node lock. The EV difference between 1/3ing our range on this board and checking range on this board was pretty minor. So I'm hoping this just shows kind of like, it doesn't really change that much. So we look at out of positions EV. It's not great. I don't remember what it was on the rainbow board, but so okay, this is actually a difference in strategy in that we're getting raised 30% of the time on ace 7-4. I can tell you right now, you're not getting raised 30% of the time if you're the under the gun opener versus a reg that's flat at the button on ace 7-4 rainbow. You're not getting raised 30% of the time if you 1/3 it. So I imagine 1/3ing range becomes pretty powerful now. Because you're not going to fold off equity, you're not going to get raised a lot. And so hands like 7-6, 6-5, 8-9 with the backdoor flush draw, I assume. Yep. These hands are not raising you. They might float you, but they're not raising you and folding you off your equity with king, queen, all that stuff. So this becomes actually a pretty reasonable node lock. Not for the reasons I thought it would, but for in position, actually, I would probably be afraid to raise a c-bet in this spot, but knowing that it's like theoretically okay, I guess gives me some justification. And maybe that's some value that we can gain here, that like, okay, when you're not getting raised 30%, I would probably lean 1/3, but if you are, then check. And if you're not raising, and if you're getting 1/3 into a lot, you can raise here. I don't think they're ever folding an ace. So like what happens if we raise and they pure call all aces, kings? They're probably not calling kings. Maybe they are. Our line is really, really full of it. Call, and then what happens? Check. And we start to, I mean, I guess we're not polarizing, but hands like 8-9 just kind of give up. Hands like 3s, hands like 5s, hands like 6-5 start going. What happens if we turn a 6? Hands like 8-9 still just check back. So yeah, I guess my thought is that like these hands, like when you raise and get called, out of position's range is just so strong that like we just kind of like, all right, I'm just gonna check and take my equity with a lot of these hands. But a hand like deuces, I guess, keeps going. Yeah, this is weird. I'm not so sure how I feel about this, but obviously it's mathematically correct because the solver says to do it. So that is ace 7-4. A surprisingly more interesting board than I thought it would be. So that's cool. Thanks for watching.